Hi everyone, I hope you're doing very well. Welcome back to the Creative Coders, and I am so happy that you're here. Today on this wonderful Wednesday, we'll have the second installment of our Datatypes series, which will cover strings. Before we dive in, let's remember that we are confident, creative, and capable coders as well as people in general. Awesome, so last week we talked about integers and floats, which are both variations of numbers. The main difference between floats and integers is that floats allow for decimal point values like 4.56, while integers must be whole numbers like 4. Number data types are very interesting, and now we'll dive right into strings to continue our understanding of the power of data types. We can think of strings using this helpful comparison. Let's say you have a bracelet with your name spelled out in beads. Just like the string of the bracelet holds every bead together, strings do the same thing with characters. A string might look like, "It's a beautiful day." And even though a string in Python doesn't quite look as beautiful as that lovely string of letters, we can still see how a string is made up of several different things. I would see a string that is actually made up of individual characters, right? So why is this important? Because we can actually treat strings as a bunch of characters put together in a particular order. And this order is actually of interest to us. Because if I were to change around the order of the letters in the string, "It's a beautiful day," to something else, it would probably look like gibberish, and it won't say the same thing anymore. So it's a different string. What can we do with this information? Since strings have an order, we can figure out what letter, for instance, is at the 5th position. This is called an index. The index, interestingly, starts at 0. So whatever the length of your string is, your last position will be the length of your string minus 1. So let's visualize this to add some clarity. Let's say I have a string that's set to the name Lupita. Lupita has 6 characters, so the length of this string is 6. Now I'm going to throw some index positions below the letters. Since we start at index position 0, we can now see why A, the character at our last position, is at position 5. So let me ask you a question based on what we learned so far. For the string stored in the name1 variable, Lupita, what is the character at index position 2? Is it U, P, or I, or something else? Pause the video, take a guess, and we will go over it. Cool. So the character at index position 2 is P. We start at index position 0 for strings, and then we count by increments of 1 until we find the index position we're looking for. Now, another cool way to write this in code is to use index syntax. The way that we can find the character at index position 2 is by enclosing this position in 2 square brackets, like so. Like many Python statements, we can look at this above statement as a few layers. First, we're asking Python to find the value stored in the name1 variable, which is Lupita. Next, we're telling it to identify the character at index position 2. And finally, we are asking Python to print this value using our print function that Python has made for us. Now, a really cool part about indexing is that we can actually get multiple characters at one time using the same formatting. So instead of just getting a character at index position 2, what if I wanted to get all of the characters between indexes 2 and 5? I can get that using something called slicing, which is taking a slice of the string. Thankfully, we use the same syntax here, but change it up a little bit. If I wanted to specify that I wanted all the characters between 2 and 5, I could do name1 square bracket 2 colon 5 and then close my square brackets. So let's notice that our syntax here is simply whatever variable name followed by a bracket and then the start position colon the end position and then concluding with, of course, our square bracket. But there's only one thing more to note about this. Well, where's the A? Shouldn't we get PETA instead of PIT, right? If we're going to index position 5, why are we not seeing an A? Well, in Python, slicing goes from the position indicated at the start and up until the index before the end index. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but it's basically just excluding the character located at that end index. So in reality, if we're saying something is going from 2 to 5, it's inclusive of characters from 2 to position 4 and excluding the character at index position 5. Awesome. So there is one more thing I want to go over. Could I actually change a string once it's established? For instance, instead of Lupita, could I change the T to an L so that it reads Lupila instead? Whenever we're curious about something in coding or anywhere else, let's just try it out and see what happens. So first, in order to change that T to an L, I'd have to figure out what position that T is at in Lupita. That is at 0, 1, 2, 3, index position 4 in the string Lupita. Now let's grab that character at our index using the indexing syntax I showed you earlier and try to set the value at that index position to L. So we get back this really interesting error message. And let's break it down. It's essentially telling us that once we create a string object and assign it to a variable, we really can't change or update that specific object. We can totally create new variables that contain that string object and add things to it. Concatenating or adding two strings is definitely possible in Python. Maybe we want to say Lupita Nyong'o is a great actress. We can do this by combining two strings, but that doesn't mean we're changing the one that we made initially. The term we most commonly use to describe strings is that they are immutable. This means that once we make the string object, we cannot update it. So that was a lot of information, and let's do a summary page before we get to our content breakdown. We can recognize strings because they are 1, enclosed in quotation marks, either single or double, doesn't matter, as long as you're consistent. So if you start a string with a double quote, you have to end the string with a double quote. They're also immutable. They can't be updated once they're created. They're also composed of different characters, right? So one string can be composed of multiple characters. They're also indexed and have an order. So each of those characters has a position in the string that we can identify with some sort of index syntax, such as our square bracket notation. Awesome. So remember, strings are part of really interesting data types that we have in Python, and they are great when we want to work with text. We will learn more about something called a dictionary next week, and that's going to be really fun. So make sure to tune in to our Spotlight Saturday this coming Saturday, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a lovely day, everybody.